Think back. When was the last time you used a reflection in one of your videos? They have the ability to embed important themes and meanings, but also can be a bit cliche. So when do we even use them? Many of us don't even think to use reflections in our videos, or if we do, they turn out to feel really gimmicky or feel out of place. So in this video, we're going to walk through some of the greatest photographs, paintings, and films in history to learn how to actually use them properly. After that, we'll talk about the psychology behind them, which is so fascinating if you're into science. And then finally, my favorite part is how to incorporate them into a narrative so it deepens the story experience. So let's go ahead and actually learn the technical know-how. Everyone knows what a reflection is, obviously, but what stops us is what we think can be used as a reflective surface and the composition techniques that we have available to us. Next time you go out for a walk, make note of every reflective surface you see. You'll notice the obvious ones first: the mirrors, the glass, the water. Anytime it rains, your opportunity to find something reflective triples. When you've exhausted the obvious ones, start looking around at things like your phone, glasses, or even someone's eyes.
It's not windy today, so the shop is boring.
Those flags over there are blowing. I want this one. Reflections don't need to be a perfect mirror either. Sometimes the textures on the surface can add depth to the image. As long as you're looking intentionally, and that's the key, intentionally, you'll find reflective surfaces everywhere. The crazy thing is, I filmed right here before, and look at all this. I didn't even think about reflections last time I was filming. Those flags are blowing. Why wasn't the other one blowing? This one's not. America's not in a very flappy mood lately, apparently. But maybe finding them isn't really the hard part for you. It's getting the composition right. That's what makes something beautiful. Here are a few ways that I've learned to frame in a reflection. The first one is obvious. It's the 50-50 split. Splitting a reflection right down the middle, having the image equally balanced. You can throw your viewers for a loop and flip the expectations by focusing on the reflection instead of the original. If you find a reflection that has a really interesting frame to it, you can kind of use it like a portal. What makes this picture here stunning is the uniformity of the path that's broken up by the puddle. Ultimately, the portal is showing us where this path is going. It has a whole story to it. One of the coolest uses of reflection I found while researching for this video that I would have never thought of is just creating a mask with the reflection. Another cool one is if you get an over-the-shoulder shot where the only way to see the character's face is through a reflection. Okay, so what does this look like practically? Well, if you're out shooting an event, go get a piece of silverware or something shiny and build a reflection around that. If you're filming a documentary, find a location with reflections in it, like next to a lake or amongst the buildings. It just adds a whole new artistic layer to your films. A big old group of people came out when I was filming and then stood out and stared at me for 20 minutes. But it's okay. We got what we needed. In older films, because they couldn't rely on CGI or all this technology, they had to use mirrors to create crazy forced perspective. Look at this film called The Little People. The Corridor crew did a great breakdown of this. But they cut a hole in the mirror to make the character feel like he was a giant amongst the little people. The takeaway here for us is you can use part of your frame as a reflection, and then have whatever's in the background complement the image to build a whole story within one shot. Sometimes everything you want in a shot doesn't line up perfectly, so if you throw a reflection in there, you can capture more of the world. Really, the only thing stopping us from using reflections more in our films or documentaries or videos is our creativity and just developing an eye to see them. Really, the only way to do that is just by looking for it intentionally. There's also a huge bonus. If you're a solo filmmaker like me, it makes you feel like you have a team. Alright, he has a good point. You really need to know the why behind reflections. You can have all the technical ability in the world, but if you're not making your audience feel what you want them to feel, then there's no point. So to do that, we're going to dive into the psychology of the brain and how reflections impact our subconscious. Historically, mirrors represent vanity and narcissism. When a mirror is convex or concave, they exaggerate the height or the weight or even the distance. As a result, mirrors that distort images, their symbolism often represents deception rather than truth. And when you break a mirror, it represents the breaking of your worldview, what you thought was true. But they can also invoke a different meaning, like when you're filming and you don't realize that you're in the shot and you've ruined everything. But I'm sure none of us have done that. Okay, let's dive into how the brain works. This is where it gets really cool. Neuroscientific research reveals that the brain processes reflective surfaces in a unique way. Like when we see our reflection, the brain's mirror neuron system activates. moving us to analyze the image before us. This is the same system responsible for empathy and self-recognition. This explains why when you see yourself in a mirror, it can evoke some profound introspective moment. The same phenomenon occurs when we see others doing that same thing. So if you have a shot of a character looking into a mirror, it drives up our own empathy for them. Another thing that triggers our brain in a unique way is symmetry. In everyday life, symmetry represents beauty, harmony, and balance. People find symmetry so pleasing due to its prevalence in nature and its association with health and efficiency. Things like a starfish and honeycomb and snowflakes, they all have this symmetrical pattern, whereas asymmetry often signals danger or illness. We want our audience to feel stable and at peace. Using a reflection to give balance is a great way to achieve this. The danger that comes in is when we use too much symmetry. It's just perceived as boring. That's why, like with any good story, the best route to go in is a balance between complexity and order to be the most aesthetically pleasing. That's why we use reflections intentionally, because they trigger a subconscious part of our brain. And if we're using them over and over or incorrectly, the only part of our brain that's triggered is boredom. Good one. Thank you. Now we have the technical ability and we know how the brain works. But what does this all mean for creating a great story? Well, to teach about that, we're going to start somewhere where I don't think you'd expect. Let's start with Eduardo Manet. Look at this painting. It takes a minute for you to kind of understand what's going on, what you're looking at. Obviously, you see the woman, and then you realize that there's a mirror as a backdrop. Naturally, first, our eyes are drawn to her eyes. The forlorn look on her face immediately brings us into her life. What is she thinking about? And honestly, as humans, unfortunately, it's a feeling that we're all well too familiar with. We've all been dissatisfied by our life stage. That's the beauty of a good painting. It's a mirror. It's not necessarily showing the physical reflection, but the emotional reflection. This should be our goal as filmmakers, to connect with people in real ways, to make them think about their life, their choices, and their beliefs. The hard part, at least for me, is having the boldness to sit with one shot long enough where people can actually get to a place of reflection. Because it takes time. You can't be jumping around cuts. You have to let them actually breathe in the shot. And the shot has to be interesting enough. So many times in my films, I get nervous about the audience losing interest because I sat on a shot too long. But this fear of mine prevents them from actually putting themselves into the story. But we've all been bored by long shots. So what's the difference? How do you avoid being boring and set up a situation where your audience enters into the story you're telling? Well, there's two main ways. First, the shot just simply needs to be interesting. Do people enjoy looking at what's going on? Is there enough movement and depth to the shot that draws the attention of the audience to different places? Second, does the shot have tension or mystery? Is it building to something that the audience wants to see and can relate to? Now, I know this isn't exactly about reflections, as we say, but it's important to know why we're adding reflections into our scenes, because we can take the lessons from this and apply them to all different types of shots. Now, back to the painting. If it was just her face, we'd miss the full context of the situation. It's the mirror that gives us the perspective we need, as well as many, many other things to look at to keep us engaged. Everything in the reflection helps us build the narrative of the situation. So, I'm going to sit here with it for a minute. What is going on to you? Comment below what you think this woman is thinking. What narrative are you building with this? There's no way we could go an entire video about reflections and not talk about one of the most famous ones in film history. From the movie Contact in 1997. Slight spoiler warning, but this happens pretty early on in the movie. I'm not going to break down the how, although it's very impressive. But I'm going to talk about the why that carries the meaning. For some context, the girl is running to get medicine for her dying father. First, as she is running, the shot is already flipped. Moments before, we're walking down the same hallway with her. As you can see, this is the original layout. Now, everything is reversed, making us feel uneasy, like we already know something's wrong. But it also means we're in the mirror world, the opposite of what should be. This girl's life is about to be completely reversed by her dad's death. As she reaches for the mirror, and it's one of the greatest transitions ever, we cross over the mirror plane back into the real world. This is a moment where her life splits into two. Forever in her life going forward, there will be a before this moment and an after this moment. And then what's left in the mirror? As the door slowly closes, it's just the image of what was and won't be again. It lingers just long enough to let us feel it, slowly fading to white. It makes us believe in the girl and want her to overcome the tragedy for the rest of the movie. It's a great way for your audience to buy into a main character. Now once more, back to the painting. Interestingly enough, Manet includes himself in the painting. It is his eyes we are seeing the situation through. He is the man talking to the girl. So what do you think he's saying about himself here? As creators, we're always putting part of ourselves into our work. In some sense, they're reflections of ourselves. So I think it's a wise thing to do to stop and ask, what am I saying about myself? You might learn something. There is a lot that needs to come together to effectively use reflections in our videos. We need to understand solid compositions, whether that's splitting it down the middle, or using a mask, or just focusing on the reflection itself. However, if we rely only on the technical side, we miss the meaning. As with any form of art, we are reflecting society. We need to say something about people's experiences, and then inspire them. Remember, the only way you can see yourself is through a reflection. My name is Sam Johnston. Thank you so much for watching.